Family-owned Gig Harbor Brewing has been making delicious, easy-drinking beers since 2015. Come by one of our tap rooms, the Harbor Tap Room along the waterfront in Gig Harbor, or our Tacoma Tap Room and Brewery on South Tacoma Way in Tacoma. Visit the tap rooms, mention the code word GIGLY, and we'll take $1 off your first pint. For the most up-to-date taproom info, please Google Gig Harbor Brewing or find us on Facebook and Instagram. This is Gig Harbor Brewing founder John Fosberg, and I'll see you in the tap rooms.
I remember that time when we had a last fight. Words were said out of line. They were your words, not mine. Do you ever look back and think about all the things you could have said? Replay them over again inside your head. This is the Revisionary Podcast. Stories of all we would have done in the past. This is the Revisionary Podcast with your host, Juan Carlos. The Revisionary Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Always Moving Podcast with Lyndon Savanto, a podcast about my life as an international athlete, writer, world traveler, and dreamer. Join me on my podcasting journey as I explore the world around me through life experiences, self-evaluation, and interviews with interesting guests ranging from professional athletes, comedians, engineers, and those who helped shape me to who I am today. Tune in to the Always Moving Podcast, part of the Chatter Network.
This is the Revisionary Podcast. Stories of all we would have.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Revisionary Podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Juan Carlos. If you've never listened to the Revisionary Podcast, the way it works is we bring on guests, usually comedians, who tell a nonfiction story about their lives in which they wish things had gone a little bit differently. Afterwards, I give them an opportunity to tell the same exact story, except the second time, they can change any facts or details they would like. This week, we're actually going to change it up a little bit. We don't have a comedian. We are actually bringing in a writer, Lorna Rose. She tends to write a lot of narrative nonfiction stories and a lot of poetry. And I'm actually excited to sit down with her and chat. It seems like she's lived in a few different places. She seems well traveled, and I always like having writers because I'm curious how their mind works and how they're gonna put together their stories. I'm always curious to what elements of their writing is gonna make it in, and how they're going to approach this writing exercise. So, without further ado, let me see if I can get Lorna on the line. Hello, Lorna, are you there?
Hey, Juan Carlos.
Oh, hey. Sorry, I didn't realize you had picked up the phone.
How's it going?
It's going well. How's everything going on your end?
It's great. It's a beautiful sunny day. And spring, I think, is around the corner.
Well, I want to say, first and foremost, I want to start off by saying thank you for joining us on the Revisionary Podcast. I'm sure the Revisionaries are very excited to hear from you.
Thanks for having me.
No, of course. So why don't you tell the Revisionaries a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got started?
So I'm a writer, and I've been a writer seriously for about, my son's 9. So I started writing about motherhood when I was a young mom, and I left my job in corporate America to be a stay-at-home mom. So I started writing about that, and things just kind of went from there. I started getting published here and there, and then kind of branched out, started writing about other things, and joined some literary organizations, and got on some boards of director, and board of directors is what it would be. And yeah, just kind of kept going. And then my daughter came, kept on writing about motherhood. I had an interesting pregnancy with her, wrote about that, and just kept going. I really enjoy it. It gives me the outlet that I've needed.
So let me ask you this. So is that your niche, like maternity and motherhood? Is that the only niche that you write in?
No, I write in some other stuff too. Both my kids are neurodiverse, which means they I guess the common term is special needs. So I write about that a fair amount. Sure. I also write about healing from childhood trauma, resiliency, things like that.
So now, I guess, like, was this something that you grew up with? Like, did you always know that you wanted to write, or did it just seem right after the initial pregnancy?
So I have been a writer my whole life. I was one of those nerds in grade school that would win like young author awards. And I got away from it.
So I would have picked on you. Got it.
What's that?
No, I'm saying I would have picked on you in grade school. That's what I'm saying. I get
it. Okay, you're
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
I wasn't encouraged exactly to be a creative. My family's all in engineering and business and just, creative writing just wasn't a thing really, in my family. And so I put it away for a long time. And then went through high school and through college and kind of would go back to it every once in a while and dabble and, put it away again, and went to work for corporate America. And then I was 35 when I had my son, and I just, I found writing again, and it felt like coming home.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I do feel that as a society, sometimes we don't value the arts, and we treat them as if they don't have, well, for lack of a better word, value. And because I can remember vividly, I personally did not like creative writing assignments, and the reason for it is because I wanted to be funny. I was trying to be comical, and that was kind of like looked down upon. It was almost as if people didn't think that I was taking the assignment seriously, So I kind of get that struggle where that you're displaying, because I also felt like compelled to go into corporate America because that's what society expects you to do,
Definitely. Yeah. And I spent the better part of 10 years working for large corporations, and it was not me in any form at all, in any stretch of the imagination. But I kept trying to do it because that's what was expected of me, or at least I thought that that's what was expected of me, So I hear you.
So did you find it liberating when you finally just could be yourself and just express yourself in words?
Very. Yeah. And I'm a terrible multitasker. Like if I have more than like two things going on, seriously, that is too taxing for my brain. I actually have a learning disability around it. And so I can't have too many things going on at once. So writing is perfect because I can sit and I can be in my own head a little bit, and I can dive deep, and I can get creative, and I can process things, and then the words can come out and sit on the page. And for me, that's really affirming, like that whole process. And then seeing the result on the page, like no matter what it is, no matter what I'm writing about, a journal entry, or, this is going to be part of my memoir, which I'm writing. It's just, to see words on the page, it allows me to sit with things in a way that I otherwise couldn't.
So let me ask you this. How are you in social situations? Like, do you find it easy to talk to people and meet new people?
Kind of. I'm an introvert by nature, which I ran from for a long time because I think the world is kind of built for extroverts. And so I tried to pretend I was an extrovert for a long time, and I was successful, but I wasn't comfortable. And so embracing my introversion these last few years, the last 10 or so years it's been really comfortable, and I've kind of thrived a little bit in that space because it is me, and I classify myself as an outgoing introvert.
I only ask because I feel like when I've spoken to writers in the past, they feel most at home and like their most authentic self with a pen in their hand or with the typewriter when they can express themselves using words. But often, they don't necessarily thrive in social situations. So I was just curious how it affected you.
Yeah. I think it really depends on who I'm meeting and if we have any sort of connection at all. I used to really worry about, like if I didn't connect with somebody, it was me.
Sure.
There was something wrong with me. And so I felt like I had to be this, like social chameleon a little bit. Like I had to change traits or like outward personality things to kind of click with more people. And that's like a lot of work.
Sure. Okay. So
yeah,
let's go ahead and we'll jump right into this. Lorna, the stage is yours. Go ahead and tell us your first story.
Okay. So this is a story about a hike. It was a hike that I did and things went wrong. So I was living in Southern California. I was in my late 20s. I was single. It was just me. And I had just returned from doing a season of trail work up in Alaska. Now, trail work, just for your listeners, in case they don't know, is you're working on a crew of people and you are in the woods, basically. You are maintaining hiking trails, building new trails, sometimes working on roads. And a road in Alaska, even a highway in Alaska, is usually gravel. And I was in rural Alaska, and I traveled around the state for 5 months doing different projects. I camped most of the time, for those 5 months. And you hike to work, like sometimes 2 or 3 miles, So I just gotten back to California from doing that work in Alaska. And so before I started back in my sort of regular world of working for a large company, I wanted to take some time and do like a 4 to 5 day camping / hiking trip by myself. And doing those things alone doesn't bother me. And I, like I said, I wanted to incorporate a day hike into this. And a day hike is a hike you can do reasonably in a day. Like you don't need to camp or spend the night somewhere in order to complete the hike. So I wanted a day hike kind of, within driving distance of Southern California. And so I found Humphreys Peak, which is a mountain in northern Arizona. It's actually the highest peak in Arizona. And I read up on it. I read all the guidebooks about this hike. I got a map of the area. And I really dove in and started doing my research. I wanted to plan well for this hike. And a lot of times these guidebooks rate the difficulty of the hike. And Humphreys Peak was rated as moderately strenuous. And again, I had just returned from Alaska, so I'm feeling pretty strong. I'm feeling pretty confident. Yeah, this hike is very doable. And all the guidebooks were saying it's going to take you between 6 and 7 hours. And it's an out and back, which means you start at the same place where you're going to end up. You go up the mountain and back down. It's not like a circuit or like a through hike or anything.
So do you mean it was like 6
hours? And this hike was going to take place.
Sorry, do you mean it was like 6 hours out and then 6 hours back, or 6 and 7 hours total?
No.
Total. Oh, okay. I was going to say, that's a long hike.
No. So all the guidebooks like say like, you know, it's going to take you 4 hours to get up the mountain and about 3 hours to come back ish,
Okay.
you know? And so I was like, all right. So this hike, this Humphreys Peak was going to take place on the third day into my journey into this trip. And then I was going to meet friends in Phoenix to kind of conclude my trip. That was kind of the route I was going to take. I was going to go through northern Arizona, do this hike, drive through Arizona, and end up in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
So on the third day, which was going to be the day of the hike, I woke up that morning and I'd been camping for these past 2 nights. I camped in a town called Needles, California, which is on the Arizona border, which is awesome, by the way. It's a beautiful place. Yeah. Shout out to Needles. And then a place called Parks, Arizona, which like this little town kind of outside Flagstaff. And Flagstaff is where Humphreys Peak is.
Okay.
So I wake up on the third day, you know, like the morning of the hike. And I was like, well, I'm going to have a long day ahead of me. It's going to be strenuous. I'm going to be working hard. I'm going to go get some breakfast. So I went to this like little restaurant, whatever I found. And then I drive to the trailhead. And I was packing my gear in the car. I was packing my backpack, snacks, water, you know, all that sort of thing, like a winter jacket. And there was a voice that told me to grab my headlamp and grab my whistle. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know why. Somebody would, you know, I had this feeling to grab those things, but I did, and that's important.
Wait, were you...
So I threw them into my backpack.
Were you doing all of this by yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know. I didn't know if you were just hiking by yourself. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't bother me to do these things by myself.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm doing this, and I'm starting out at the trailhead. It's about 9 o'clock by now. It's about 9 in the morning. And so I'm starting out, you know, I'm feeling good. And I meet this other hiker he's hiking alone as well. And it turned out that he is from the same area of Chicago where I grew up. Like we grew up within maybe a half hour of each other.
Right.
Total coincidence. So we start hiking together for like a little while, like maybe a half hour, and we're chatting and we're, you know, kind of just hiking together. And we split up, you know, because his pace, I'm not a very fast hiker. And so his, he kind of wants to go faster. So I was like, all right, you know, I'll see you later. Peace out. You know, good luck with the hike. And so I keep hiking. And I keep hiking. And I'm realizing pretty quickly that I'm underestimating the difficulty of this hike. Mm-hmm. It's taking me a lot longer.
Sure.
I underestimated the steepness of the terrain. And I'm also underestimating the affects how altitude is affecting me, because Humphreys Peak is 12,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's high. And altitude really, I don't know if you've been at altitude, like hiking, it can really affect you. It can affect your thinking. Mm-hmm. It can affect your thirst level, your hunger level, it can kind of throw all those things out of whack.
Right.
So I'm starting to feel that, you know, and I keep having to take breaks. Like I'm a strong hiker, but I keep getting winded. I keep stopping for water and snacks and, you know, whatever. So I finally summit, right? I finally reach the top, and I'm the only one up there. And so I'm taking pictures and I'm drinking more water and having more snacks. And I finally start descending.
Mhm.
By this time, maybe an hour into my descent, it's starting to get dark.
Right.
Now, this is November, so there's not a whole lot of daylight anyway. You know, and it's not like it's July.
Sure.
And it's starting to get cold. And I'm continuing to hike. I'm just sort of, you know, kind of in the zone, kind of like, I'm just going to get through this hike at this point, you know. And at some point and it's getting darker and darker. At some point, I do realize that I have my headlamp in my backpack. So I stop and I put it on. And I keep hiking.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep hiking. And I'm going. And it's dark by now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the moon's out, which is cool.
Sure.
But that also means it's clear and it's cold. And that whole altitude thing,
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to get disoriented.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to not think clearly. Like, I have this weird headache. I'm starting to get confused. Like, I'm not sure if I'm on the right trail.
Mm-hmm.
I keep questioning if I'm really even on the right trail. Well, there's only one trail.
Right.
But I'm thinking, oh my God, I have to get on this other trail. Like, this is taking too long. I must be on the wrong trail. And it's so, at one point, I remember stopping and I started to walk off trail, like into the bush.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no trail at all. But I'm questioning, you know, I'm like, oh, this is the way to go, you know?
Yeah.
And it takes me a while to realize that it's not, and I need to backtrack and get back on the trail.
Sure.
So I'm doing stuff like that. And at several points, I think that I should be going uphill instead of downhill.
Okay.
Like, for some reason, I think maybe there's like a saddle, like a feature of the trail where it like goes the opposite direction
Uh-huh.
that it should. And so I'm backtracking and I'm like, no, I need to go back up. So I start ascending again. And then I'm like, no, this is wrong. I need to go down.
Uh-huh.
And I really could not make a decision.
Right.
And so my headlamp starts to die.
Uh-huh.
And I can only see what is right directly in front of me. And it's all wooded.
Right.
You know, it's all this wooded forest. And it's, you know, I'm in the middle of these trees. I can't really see anything except what's directly in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, when you hike long enough, at least for me, I didn't feel like I was hiking anymore. I felt like I was being sucked along a dark trail.
Yeah.
And at this point, I've been hiking for like 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, as disoriented as I was, I realized I had my whistle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped and I got out my whistle. And 3 short blasts of a whistle is the SOS signal.
Mm-hmm.
That means I'm in trouble. And I didn't know if anyone would hear me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how far I was from the trailhead, like how much further I had to go. I didn't know how far away from the town of Flagstaff I was. I didn't know any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, okay, I'm going to blow my whistle every half hour or so, these 3 short blasts,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe someone will hear me.
Right.
Because I know I'm in trouble. I know I need help.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I'm out of snacks. I have got like maybe a sip of water left.
Yeah.
So I start blowing my whistle. I'm like, you know what? maybe that's I'll have some sort of sense of control or something,
Mm-hmm.
So I start blowing my whistle, 3 short blasts about every half hour, not knowing if anyone was going to hear me. And turns out a search and rescue team was on the mountain looking for me. And they heard my whistle. And so they found me within the hour.
So how did they know that you were in like still in the hike? Like, did you check in before you went up there? Or? Oh, I know how it happened. Go ahead. I figured it out, but you tell them.
The fellow, okay, the fellow lone hiker, the fellow Chicago native that I ran into at the beginning of my hike, he hiked out first. Actually, we had passed each other one other point in the trail. I was about to summit, and he had just come back down. He hiked all the way out, so back to the trailhead, and he waited for me.
Mm.
And when I didn't show up after, I don't know how long he waited, but he said, something's wrong, because she seemed like a pretty strong hiker. So something's wrong. And he went and got search and rescue.
Okay.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, that's exactly. I knew it had happened because my thought process was, why else would she mention this lone Chicago hiker unless he become important later in the story?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what happened next? So then, like, they rescue you. What, they just took you back to the meeting point?
Yeah. So they took, I could still walk.
Sure.
Which, search and rescue teams, they've been known they have to carry somebody out on a stretcher because they're in like such bad shape. But I could still walk. So, they led me back to the trailhead. I think I had about another hour to go. And we all reached the trailhead, and they checked me out medically. And, I was fine. I was spooked. I was cold. I was thirsty. But other than that, I was in good shape. I recall one of the team members saying I looked wildly. And I don't know if I looked like a wild animal at that point or what, but that stuck with me, the term wildly, because I was like, ooh, I looked wildly, But my original plan after that hike was to camp in Sedona, which is this beautiful red rock town in Arizona. It was just south of Flagstaff. So my original plan was to finish the hike in plenty of daylight, drive down to Sedona, and set up camp for the night. And so in my brain, my still foggy brain, I told the SAR team, like, yeah, I'm going to go camp in Sedona. They were like, no, you're not. We're gonna follow you to a hotel. There's a hotel here in town. We're gonna get you checked in, and that's where you're going to sort of recoup. Yeah.
So, first and foremost, this is a fascinating story, but let me tell you, I don't hike. And a large part of the reason why I don't hike is exactly this story. That is my absolute fear, is that I'm in the middle of the woods.
No.
And then all of a sudden,
I hope I don't want to discourage you or any of the listeners to like not hike. I don't want to do that. Because hiking, I've done so many solo hikes, and they've been great. They've been restorative, and they do not end with a search and rescue call out.
Yeah.
Like this, this is the only one, that has gone that way.
No, I get that, but I just feel like the wilderness and the wild is best left to the wildlife. And I don't know, like I've read stories of people like running into like feral coyotes or like bears and stuff like that while on a hike in the middle of the woods, and that stuff scares me,
Yeah.
I'm a kid from the Bronx. I feel more comfortable with ambulance lights and like,
Sure.
you know, and speeding cars. You know, the quiet kind of freaks me out. I don't know.
Oh, see, I'm the opposite. See, I love solitude and quiet, and like get me in the middle of nowhere. It's awesome.
Like I get that and I respect that. It's just no. What I'm saying is, here's the thing. First and foremost, I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad this turns out, and I'm glad that he cared enough to find you. But here, let me ask you this: did you ever figure out why he was waiting for you?
You know, we had a nice rapport. Going up the mountain. And so I just thought, you know, he, you know, maybe was, you know, concerned for my safety, you know, and wanted to make sure I made it out okay. Or
Sure.
He just wanted to say hi again, you know?
Yeah. Did you see him after you came out?
I know we kept in touch for a little while after the hike. We must have exchanged phone numbers at one point during the hike. I'm not really sure how they went down, but I do remember texting him after I came out and said, "Hey, I'm okay. You know, just to let you know I'm okay." Because the search and rescue team did tell me that it was him that had launched the search, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I did let him know that I was okay. And I thanked him for what he did, because not everybody would have done that.
Right. So, so that answers my question. So he wasn't there like waiting for you at like after the search and rescue team went in. He had already left.
Oh no, he left. He had like an agenda. He was on a solo camping trip, just like me. And he needed to get like to the Grand Canyon or something. He had an itinerary and a schedule to keep. Yeah, so he was already gone. Yeah.
Okay. And so I know you mentioned that the altitude had kind of messed with you, but was that the only thing that had disoriented you? Like, was there anything else messing with you? Was it the dehydration that was getting to you as well? Were you feeling muscle cramps? Like,
yeah.
You know? Walk me through that.
No, well, altitude can do all of those things you just said. You know, I mean, the air is thinner. I think the rule of thumb is 10,000 feet is where the typical person starts to really feel the altitude, starts to get disoriented and headachy and muscle achy and dehydrated, those things. So at the summit, I was at about 12,000 feet, and I wasn't used to being at altitude. I mean, I lived in California at pretty much, you know, near the coast. And so I'm not used to being up this high. I just didn't know. I mean, I had read about the effects of being at altitude, but I never experienced them, and I did not account for them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And, all right. Well, let's go ahead and, I'm going to give the stage back to you. Go ahead and tell us your second story.
Okay. You know, there was a mistake. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there were several things I did wrong. It was kind of a domino effect. I would, if I had to go back and do it again, I would change the first domino that sort of impacted the rest of the day. And I would have started that hike earlier, like a normal person. Like 9 o'clock is way too late to start a hike that big.
Right.
Like 7 or 7:30 is when you want to start an all-day hike.
That makes sense. So that, even if it takes longer, you're still out there in the sun. Yes.
And probably doing it in November wasn't the best idea.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because you've got daylight working against you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would have done differently. I just would have started earlier, not, I think I overestimated myself and I underestimated the hike. Yeah.
So then, but walk me through this, because now the what it seems to me is if you were to have started earlier, right, you wouldn't have met your friend. So
correct.
Is that a trade-off you were willing to do? Because it seems like you guys stayed in touch afterwards.
We did. And you know what? If I had started earlier, I wouldn't have the story to tell, right? So I wouldn't be on your show right now. Yeah.
And let me ask you this then.
Yeah. So
how long did it take?
Right. It's a trade-off.
And what time did he start his hike? Because you said that he was hiking faster than you, but it sounds to me like, based on your timing, if you guys ran into each other a few times, he must have started right around the same time, or am I incorrect?
Yeah, he must have. Yeah, because I ran into him pretty shortly after I left the trailhead. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, he just...
So what go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if he's, there's some like power hikers out there that hike like super fast, like there are these ultra light hikers that will do the Grand Canyon. They'll hike the whole freaking Grand Canyon in like less than a day or something. It's crazy. And that's like a, 2 to 3 day hike for like regular people. So I don't know if he was one of those like speed hikers or what, but you're right. He started the hike the same time I did. Yeah.
Which would lead me to believe that if you guys are both experienced hikers, then maybe, what you did wasn't a mistake at all. You just happened to get the worst of it on that day. Perhaps.
Yeah. I am a little bit of a slower hiker. I know that about myself. And so that played into it too. I'm kind of on the leisurely end of hiking, I guess. And I think he was just kind of more like, go, like, I'm just going to kind of get it done type thing.
Sure. Understood. So now let me ask you this. Could you elaborate on what the concerns were with letting you go camping?
Oh, with the SAR team?
Yeah.
Like they told me, you're not hiking.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't want me driving away from Flagstaff. Sedona is at least another half hour from Flagstaff. So I would be like, driving in my condition. I think that's what the concern was, is that I just needed to go to bed, and I would, based on my condition, actually having a bed and not sleeping on the ground was ideal, to kind of let my body recoup.
Right.
And I was still confused. I mean, I was still a little bit disoriented.
Got it.
Even after the hike. And so they're like, yeah, you're just going to have to cool it here. We're going to get you a hotel and you're just going to, kind of rehab it there.
Did they at least pay for the hotel, or are you in charge of that yourself?
No, I think I was, which is fine. I mean, a lot of these SAR teams are volunteer.
I understand. Okay.
They're volunteer through the sheriff's department typically. So you know what, too? It was the night before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see.
That this happened. Yeah. So, these guys are all called away from their families. This is maybe 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night to go search for this girl on the mountain. So, I didn't expect them to like spring for a hotel or anything for me.
Right. No, that makes a lot more sense. So I want to say thank you for coming onto the Revisionary podcast. Before I let you go, we have 2 traditions on this podcast. The first is we like to highlight a charity or an organization that is important to our guests. Do you have a charity or an organization for us?
I have a few. The one that comes to mind first is called the Native American Rights Fund, or NARF. And they do a lot of work. Yeah, they do a lot of work representing Native American interests, upholding treaty agreements, et cetera, in the courts.
That's perfect. The second tradition that we have on this podcast is we like to ask our guests to share a quick childhood story that puts a smile on their face. Do you have one of those for us?
When I was in first grade, I puked on my best friend, like literally on her.
Yeah.
Like during class, like we were in class and I wasn't feeling well. And I was sitting next to her and I just, I didn't mean to, but I just like turned to her and I puked and I felt horrible and I still feel horrible. We're still friends actually after all this time and puke.
Yeah, she's a good friend.
But she is. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the first story that comes to mind.
So what happened? That that you walk in one day and her makeup was a little off, and you're like, "Oh, you're looking a little bad today." So you just puked. Did she forget to shower for a week? And like her smell made your nose turn. Like, what happened here? I want to know.
Oh God, I don't know. I don't remember. I just I had a stomach bug, and it just kind of came on, and she just happened to be sitting next to me in class, and it was just one of those things that came on really suddenly. And I just was facing the wrong direction when the puke came out.
I understand. I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Revisionary podcast. Before I let you go, do you have any... well, first off, let's start here. Where can the Revisionaries follow you?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So I hang out a lot on Instagram. My handle is Lorna Rose Writes, and there's like a underline in between Lorna and Rose and Writes. So there's 2 underlines in my handle. And then you can always find me on my website, which is just lornarose.com. It's LORNAROSE.com.
Perfect. And where can we find some of your work, some of your writings?
Everything's on my website.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so if you go there, you'll also find interviews I've done, talks I've given. Everything's on my website.
All right, perfect. Do you have any last words for the Revisionaries?
Just thanks for listening, and don't start a day hike too late in the day.
That's good advice. That's really good advice. All right, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, Lorna. This has been an absolute pleasure, and honestly, I just hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Juan Carlos.
All right, bye, Revisionaries.
The Revisionary Podcast.
It's funny how many of y'all keep trying to get me to go hiking. And then I hear stories like this, and I go, yeah, this is why I don't go hiking. She's an experienced hiker. And had it not been for that one guy trying to be a nice guy, she might have never made it out. I'm just saying. Cities were built for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, you can find someone to help you out in the city. You know what I mean? You're not stuck in the middle of nowhere at the beck and call of wild animals. You know what? I'll tell you what. Someday, if any of you guys message me and ask me, message me on social media, preferably Instagram, and remind me to tell you the alleged boar story. But until next time, I want to say thank you for listening.
This is the Revisionary